Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a massive turning point in history, 1776, the birth of a nation. Today, we're unpacking the intense debates, the sheer logistical nightmares, and the monumental decisions that completely transformed a scattered young land into the United States. We're going way beyond just memorizing dates here. We're getting into the very human struggles that birthed the modern superpower.
So I want you to think about this for a second. What does it actually take to birth a new nation? It's a massive, almost unfathomable question, right? I mean, it isn't just about drawing some new borders on a map, drafting a fancy document, or picking out new colors for a flag. It requires monumental, seismic shifts in thinking. It demands an absolute willingness from ordinary people to literally risk everything they have, stepping together into a completely uncharted and dangerous unknown. That is the core theme of our explainer today, and we're going to unpack exactly how that monumental shift happened.
Okay, let's dive into this. To truly understand the magnitude of what happened back in 1776, we have to strip the modern world entirely from our minds. You really need to visualize stepping back into a young, deeply wild land. We're talking no sprawling cities, no paved highways, and absolutely no safety nets. The psychological reality of this era was defined by total self-reliance and, honestly, profound isolation. It was a time when survival meant carving a life straight out of the raw earth, totally removed from any kind of central authority.
Picture an endless, totally untamed wilderness. Huge, ancient forests covered massive stretches of the continent, creating these formidable natural barriers between settlements. It's absolutely crucial to visualize this dense, sprawling landscape because it completely dictated the rhythm of daily life. Nature itself acted like a giant wall, deeply isolating communities from one another. Honestly, the very idea that people separated by such vast, impenetrable wilderness could ever unite under a single cause, well, it makes the eventual collaboration of these colonies seem almost impossible.
And traversing that wilderness, that meant relying entirely on horses and wagons. But the real challenge here wasn't just the grueling physical travel. It was the severe information lag. Think about it. A message, a new idea, or news of a distant battle took literally weeks to cross these treacherous paths. In a landscape where communication moved at the speed of a horse, trying to coordinate any kind of unified rebellion against a global superpower was a complete logistical nightmare. Every single decision was being made in a vacuum, separated by weeks of total silence.
Yet despite that overwhelming isolation, representatives from across those scattered colonies somehow defied the odds and converged in one room. And that brings us to a boiling point in Philadelphia. The American colonies had grown profoundly frustrated under the distant, heavy hand of the British king. They were searching for autonomy. They wanted the fundamental right to govern themselves, rather than having their everyday lives dictated by a monarch sitting a whole ocean away. That singular room in Philadelphia basically became the epicenter of a revolution. Now, inside that room, the tension was suffocating. These leaders were locked in a fierce, incredibly high-stakes debate that would literally determine the fate of millions of people. On one hand, you had this paralyzing fear of initiating a bloody, totally asymmetrical war against the world's greatest superpower. I mean, treason meant the gallows for sure. But pushing against that sheer terror was a passionate, uncompromising conviction. The belief that true freedom and the right to self-governance were worth the ultimate risk. It was a stark choice between dangerous liberty and peaceful subjugation. That uncompromising desire for liberty really found its voice through one of the most brilliant minds of the era, Benjamin Franklin. He basically provided the ideological anchor for the entire debate. His philosophy was crystal clear, stating that a nation becomes strong when its people can make their own decisions. Now, this wasn't merely some political talking point to win an argument. It was a profound statement on human potential. Franklin understood that true, enduring strength stems directly from the autonomy and agency of everyday people. Of course, this realization didn't just happen overnight. For many agonizing days, the delegates found themselves completely deadlocked, fiercely wrestling with the grim reality of war versus the intoxicating promise of freedom. But the suspense finally broke on a pivotal final day of debate, when they crossed the point of no return. By officially signing the Declaration of Independence, they committed their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to the cause. This monumental, highly secret leap of faith culminated a few days later, on July 4th, 1776, when their revolutionary words were finally read aloud to the public. And let me tell you, the reaction in the streets was absolutely electric. As the words of the Declaration echoed through the crowds, spontaneous joy just erupted. People were waving flags, citizens were literally dancing in the cobblestone streets, and the whole atmosphere was charged with this breathtaking sense of liberation. The heavy, suffocating weight of royal rule had been lifted, replaced by the thrilling and probably terrifying realization that they were witnessing the birth of a completely new nation. The pure, unrestrained energy of that moment transformed ordinary colonists into citizens of a republic. And cutting right through all the cheers of that crowd was the deep, resonant tolling of a massive bell in Philadelphia. What began simply as a practical way to summon the citizens for the reading of the Declaration, well, it soon took on a life of its own. That great bell resonated so deeply with the spirit of the day that it eventually became known worldwide as the Liberty Bell. It evolved from a mere piece of civic hardware into an iconic, enduring visual symbol of American freedom that we still recognize today. But as the echoes of that great bell faded, the euphoric high of July 4th met a harsh, unforgiving dawn. The celebrations were over, and the daunting reality of what they had just done really set in. Securing their newfound independence wasn't going to be won with cheers and ringing bells. It would demand immense courage, a relentless defense of freedom, and the absolute necessity of unity just to survive the impending storm.
So the crucial point here is that the road ahead was brutal. Independence triggered immediate, catastrophic challenges. The new country was instantly plunged into a devastating, prolonged war against a far superior military force. Communities were fractured, trade was entirely choked off, and crushing poverty swept right through the colonies. Those early days were defined by freezing winters, severe supply shortages, and desperate struggles just to keep this fragile, totally unprecedented idea of a self-governing nation from collapsing entirely under the pressure.
Yet, remarkably, they endured. The very hardships that threatened to destroy them were exactly what forged their eventual strength. Surviving those grueling winters and the devastating economic fallout forced these really disparate colonies to rely on one another, weaving together a deeply resilient national fabric. Out of that intense crucible of war and poverty, the young nation didn't just survive. It adapted, it grew stronger, and it steadily laid the foundation to eventually become one of the most powerful and influential countries in the modern world.
Which brings us to the profound, really enduring lesson of this entire era. Freedom and unity require courage. They are not passive states of being. They are not inherently free, and they certainly aren't guaranteed to last forever. They have to be consciously built, fiercely protected, and continuously maintained by the everyday bravery of the people. I mean, it took profound courage to sever ties with an empire, and it takes exactly that same courage to maintain a unified society long after the initial revolution is over. The history of 1776 isn't just some distant story of horse-drawn wagons and ink on faded parchment. It is an active, demanding blueprint for all of us right now. The same forces of isolation and division challenge us in entirely new ways today, and the demand for bravery remains just as strong. So I'll leave you with this. How will you use courage to foster unity today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you next time.